Hello everyone, my name is John Shaffer. I'm with the Graduate School, and this recorded workshop is going to be over the topic of selecting your thesis or dissertation chair. So I have a couple comics throughout the presentation. This one is basically kind of dictating the start of the thesis process, and they talk about, in the cartoon, they're talking about the advisors talking about what the research will be for the student's thesis, and at the last comic, or the last slide, is frankly, I think that topic would be very challenging but extremely fascinating. And the student says, can I see that for a minute, based on the topic that the student proposed in their graduate school application. So what we're going to be talking about in this session is the role of a thesis or dissertation chair, questions to consider with selection, choosing wisely, interviewing when you're actually interviewing your prospective chair, and the things to watch out for. So basically red flags. So there's different roles that a chair might take on. There are a few of them. One is the role of the advocate. And this is a person that's going to be a champion for your cause. So they're behind you 100%. They believe in the competency of you as the student. They are the first line of defense against others' agendas. So if there are other people in your department that feel like you should be doing a certain type of research or focusing on a certain type of area of your research, this is the person that's gonna protect you. They're gonna be that gatekeeper to make sure that that other people's agendas don't infuse into what you are trying to accomplish with your research. They're also a protector against committee members. So you have additional committee members, obviously, for either your thesis or dissertation, and they also may have their own agenda as far as what they feel you should be doing. Some of them may want to take charge, depending on the type of personalities of the people on your committee. And so again, the role of the advocate is to kind of keep those people, all the committee members, in check so that you don't have to do that. And then they're also going to focus on the original premise of your proposal. So basically when you proposed what you wanted to do for your thesis or dissertation, this is the person that's going to assist you with focusing on that and making sure that you don't detour from your original goal and original research. Okay, then we have something called the manager. So this person is kind of drives subordinates. If you think of a manager that you might have or have had at work, so your boss or your supervisor. Manager, if you look at managers also lend to managerial skills. So a manager is a specific type of, I think, skill set, a specific type of person. And again, this is a person that drives subordinates, so make sure that the subordinates do exactly what the manager wants them to do. They track mistakes, so anything that you may have done wrong, they will make sure that those items are corrected, and that the mistakes don't happen again. They're also going to chart your progress. So from the moment that you start your work, this person will make sure that you stay on track and that they have set goals. So by this time, you're going to be this far along in your thesis or dissertation process. And then by this time, then you're going to be this far, et cetera, and so forth. Then they're also going to engage in transactional relationships. So basically, they're looking for actionable results or action items taken care of. Again, this goes back to charting the progress, making sure that that you are moving along exactly how they see you should be moving along to finish what you're working on. They can be overcritical at times. A lot of managers can be very critical of their subordinates' work, and the problem is if you have a chair that has somewhat of manager characteristics, you just want to make sure that they do not get stuck in this role where they cannot take on any of the other roles such as advocate, leader. As we go down a few more slides, you just want to make sure that they don't get stuck in this role, because this is not the type of characteristic or the type of chair that you want. And basically, this is the only thing that they do. They act as a manager through the entire time that they're your chair. And then we have someone called the leader. There is definitely a fine line between managers and leaders, and a lot of people think that managers are leaders simply because they may lead a department or lead a person, or because they are a boss, that they're considered a leader. That actually is not the case. A leader is very different than a manager, and the difference is motivation. A leader is going to motivate you. A manager is simply going to make sure that the task is getting done. But a leader, going back to motivation, a leader is going to motivate you to get the job done. They're going to provide intellectual stimulation for you. They're going to be very charismatic, and also when it comes down to actually working on the project, on your project or your dissertation or your thesis, they can motivate, they can be a cheerleader, they can be charismatic, but when it comes down to getting the work done, they can determine between when inspiration is needed or when practical help is needed. So when they need to be a cheerleader and say, come on, you can do it, and when they need to sit down and say, okay, so where are we? What do we need to do next? What's the goal, etc. So a good leader can determine that. Then we have the role of the judge. Now the judge is a gatekeeper that ensures personal standards, department standards, and university standards are all being met. So this person is very bottom line, rule follower, going to make sure that all of the research is meeting those standards of personal, department, and university. They should a person who's your thesis or dissertation chair, especially dissertation chairs, they should be able to bestow or put on you, in a sense, a colleague status. So at this point, you're finished with your coursework, you're working on your research, especially if you're looking at a dissertation, you're within steps of being a PhD yourself. And so this person who is your advisor should be able to bestow colleague status, but they have a hard time accepting former subordinates as equals. So it is very difficult for them. I would say that this last one is really more for the dissertation person. A thesis, you are in a master's program, you are probably not at the same academic level or academic achievement as your advisor. So chances are they will not bestow a colleague status to you. So this is more focused on the dissertation student. So those are the roles, the different roles. Now obviously I think the best thing is to have a mix. You want the best aspects of each one of those roles. I think the best ones, in my opinion, are leader and advocate. However, you do need someone that can keep you on track, such as a manager. You do need someone that's going to watch out for that your standards are maintained. So that's where a good quality of the judge comes in. But I think a good mix of all four of those is exactly where you want to be. You don't want a thesis or dissertation chair to be only one of those. You want an all-encompassing person that's going to make you more successful in your process. So questions to consider as you are determining who is going to be an effective thesis or dissertation chair. It's thinking, what do you want? What do you want out of this person that's going to be your thesis or dissertation chair, and really push you through to your end result, which is graduation. Get you through this process, help get you through this process, help guide you through this process, and get you the most, and also get you the most bang for your buck, and we'll talk about that here as well. So first of all, what are their research interests? You really want to make sure that your research interests and your chair's research interests are very closely in line. Also, what is their reputation? Not only their reputation as a faculty member, so from a student's perspective, but what is their reputation in the department? What is their reputation amongst other faculty members? What is their reputation at the university? That's something you need to take into consideration. Responsiveness, and what is meant by this is students that maybe work with them or students that have had them as a faculty member, or possibly you have had them as a faculty member. When students contact them with questions or have problems that they need assistance with, how responsive is the faculty member? Do they get back with them immediately, like within the day? Do they get back to them within 24 hours? Is this person someone that you have to keep hounding them to get a response? Something to consider as you think about moving through this thesis or dissertation process, and you need fairly immediate feedback from them so that you can continue to move forward. What is their availability? So what that means is, are they easily scheduled? Can you schedule a meeting with them fairly without any problems? And and then they actually keep the meeting date, they don't change it or ask to postpone it. Basically, are they available to you when you will need them to be available to you? What does their longevity look like? If they are on a tenure track, where are they in the process? Is this a person that is likely to get tenure, which means they're going to be here for the long haul? Because if you're looking at a 6-year, at least here at UTSA, you're looking at a 6-year process for tenure. And so if they get to that 6th year and they have not been offered tenure, they're not going to be here longer than a 7th year. And so you need to take that into consideration. If it's someone at the very beginning of their tenure process, the other thing you need to be careful about is, do they have the time to give to you? Publication opportunities. Are they going to, do they have opportunities for you to get published or co-published, whether it be a full text, journal, chapter in a book, anything? Do they have those connections? And are they willing to collaborate with you so that you can get published? Because ultimately, this is going to help you in the future build up your CV. Are they tied to professional opportunities? So if whether it be you're looking for a position in academia or even outside of academia post receiving your degree, is this a person that can help get you a job? Do they have the contacts out there necessary, whether it be at other universities or actually out in industry, if you're not looking at academia? How are their relationships with faculty? And I mentioned this a little bit before, earlier, with what is their reputation? Do they have good relationships with other faculty? Because keep in mind that this person is going to kind of be steering the ship of the committee. So you want to make sure that they work well with others, especially other faculty. What are the student opinions of this faculty member? Again, it goes back to reputation. Now, if you have had this person as a faculty, you pretty much can gauge whether this is someone you're interested in having as a faculty member or not. Will they give credit for joint work? And this goes back to kind of in sync with publication opportunities. Is this a person that if you help them do research on a journal, they're writing a journal article or a text or a chapter, is this someone, if they're asking for your assistance, is this someone that's going to actually put your name on the chapter or book or article with them. And you can kind of find that out either by directly asking them, which we'll get to in a minute, questions to ask as you're interviewing your potential chair, or you can ask other people, other students that have worked with them. Do they have funded opportunities? And what I mean by this, funded opportunities, is what types of funding do they have available to them? Are they grant funded? Do they receive a stipend from the university, from the department? What types of funds do they have? And if they have if they're grant funded, are those funds renewable? And because this is going to determine if you're conducting your research with them in a lab, for example, and their research is grant funded, that means that everything you're doing is being funded by an outside source other than the university. And then you have to ask yourself, what's their reputation in receiving grant funding or receiving renewals, which again, talk about in the future. Are they ethical? That doesn't need a lot of explanation. And then, are your work habits compatible? If, depending on your schedule, if we're looking at schedule, if you need to work during certain times of the day or need to meet with them during certain times of the day, and yet their schedule is opposite of yours, that's not necessarily going to work. Also, you just need to look at work styles, how you approach doing your work. Is it similar to how their approach to work is, or approach to research? You need to make sure that you guys are compatible in this way as well. Okay, so when you're interviewing a potential advisor, these are the things that you need to ask them. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this kind of couples with questions to consider. But when you actually get in with the potential advisor, you've thought about everything, you have narrowed down to maybe 2 or 3 faculty to talk to. You obviously have them rank ordered, your first, second, third. And so now you're actually sitting face to face with them. And honestly, you're interviewing them, but they're probably also interviewing you. So a couple things you want to ask. How much time do you spend with your students? So basically the students that they're advising, and how many students are they advising? If you think that they have too many students to where you're not going to get the one-on-one time that you need, time to move on to the next person. What are their expectations of your workload? Meaning, if you're conducting research for them in a lab, for example, or you're helping them with research, which is also in turn helping with your research, what are their expectations with that? We talked about the number 3 before. Do they have a flexible schedule? What types of funding are available to them? Number 5, what types of lab space and equipment do they have? Now, of course, this is applicable. If this is only applicable to certain types of disciplines, especially the engineering and science disciplines. Can they provide authorship and collaborative projects for you? We talked about that before as well. How many students that have worked under them or have had them as a thesis or dissertation chair have earned a degree, and how long did it take them to earn that degree? What are the students that have worked for or had this faculty member as a thesis or dissertation chair? What are they doing now? And can they advise on non-academic career options? There are a lot of faculty where their ties are in academia. They do not have ties to the community. They do not have ties to industry. If you're debating whether you may want to go into industry or go into academia, this is going to be, this person that has ties to both, that's going to be your ultimate chair. That's someone that you definitely want to consider. Okay, when we're talking about evaluating faculty prominence, these are some things you can keep in mind or to ask. You know, you can do some research on you don't have to ask everything of the faculty member. There are things you can go and speak to your department about and things you can do research on your own. And so, but these are some of the other things that you want to consider when looking at faculty prominence as far as someone that you might want to have as a thesis or dissertation chair. Do they have a steady record of publications? Are they regularly published throughout their career? Do you have others that are actually citing, or are there others that are actually citing your faculty members' published articles? Are they publishing 2 or more papers per year? So that's something to consider. What is their grant support and renewal history? Talked about that before. So what that means is, what grants do they have? Are they high-profile grants or very prominent grants, like from certain agencies? And what is their renewal history? Because this is going to determine possibly if the research you're going to be conducting with them continues. And if that research is assisting, or that funding, that research is assisting with your thesis or dissertation, you're going to want to make sure that that grant funding continues. And so you want to really be aware of their renewal history. The final item is, are they on boards, review panels? Do they give seminars, or are they invited to give seminars? And do they write peer journal reviews, or are they asked to write peer journal reviews? In a sense, are they asked to review other peers' journals? This shows prominence. This shows that all of these shows that they're a very respected person in their field. And obviously they don't have to have all 4 of these items, these last 4, or even all 5 of the bullet points. But this kind of gives you a snapshot of what would make a very effective thesis or dissertation chair. Now, unfortunately, if you know that there would make a prominent thesis or dissertation chair, so does everybody else. So this person, as we're looking at on paper, this person is probably highly sought after by students. So you may not find someone with all of these criteria, but hopefully with the majority of them. Okay, so we're looking at red flags. What are some red flags we're considering? What are some things you want to look out for? So these are, you see any of these, and you may want to think twice about asking this faculty member to be your thesis or dissertation chair. First one is the overachiever. They have a higher than needed number of publications. They're on way too many committees. They're members of way too many committees, including thesis or dissertation committees and then other university committees. And they have a high number of work in progress manuscripts. Now, one thing I do want to go back to is, and I don't mean to make a general statement, and please note that I'm not, but I would also tend to shy away from a brand new faculty member. This may be someone that you can have on your committee, but maybe not the best person to be your chair. And you may just love this new faculty member, think that they are the best faculty ever. But the fact is, as a new faculty, they have very high expectations. They're given very high expectations from their department chair, the number of committees they're sitting on, the expectations. They're having to, jump in and do research, get published, get funding. And so they're hitting the ground running when they're new. And they're also kind of getting their sea legs and trying to figure out how everything fits together. Some of them may be seen as an overachiever, or may have, even though in the long run, when the dust settles and they've been in the job for a couple years or been in their position for a couple years, it may not be, everything may calm down and they may not be such an overachiever. But, you know, at the beginning, oftentimes they have just way too much going on to be able to also, although they may want to, and they will want to, they just don't have the time to allocate to you. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you have an overachiever, the result is you're begging for attention and time because they have way too much going on. They're stretched. They're burning the candle at both ends. So ultimately, it's going to be a longer time to complete your thesis or dissertation and to graduate, because you're not getting the responsiveness you need because they're involved in too much. On the flip side of the overachiever is the underachiever, and this person actually can be more dangerous than the overachiever because they simply, chances are they took you on because it was an expectation of the department, or it looks good on their CV, and that's the only reason. They really don't want to have to put the work in. And so they're always asking you to confer with other faculty members. They really don't want to answer the questions, and usually this is going to be by email, not face-to-face. They won't meet with you often. They just want you to kind of confer with other people. It might be other people on the committee, but they're not giving you the direction, and they're not giving you the direction. They're not being a leader, basically. You can't necessarily prove that they're 100% competent, and that is always a problem. If you can't prove that the faculty member is competent, again, big, huge red flag, move on. The result, of course, again, is an extended time to completion. If this person, who you may see as the underachiever, does not have tenure yet, be very wary, because they may not be here very long. Because if they're an underachiever, chances are they are not going to get tenure, and they will be leaving the university. So we're getting into now, again, some of the comments that relate to the red flags. This one, your thesis must be an original piece of work, but not too original. I can't make sure that you don't embarrass me. It must be new and groundbreaking, yet follow the same vision and protocols I established decades ago. And so the student says, so when you say original, you actually mean more of the same but different. This person is the non-committer. So ask yourself a couple questions. Do they play everything by ear? Do they never commit to a firm schedule? Do they never give you firm, concrete responses? So what ends up happening is you have to turn to other committee members for guidance, which then means you have multiple, quote, bosses. So too many cooks in the kitchen is what I like to call it. Just too many cooks in the kitchen. So you do not have definitive leadership. And if you look at back when we were talking about the advocate, the leader, is that you need someone in charge. You need someone that is going to keep the committee members in line, that is giving you direction. That's their job. And to be somewhat of a mentor. But if you're having to turn to other people, this person is ineffective in their role. So the result is you're going to extend your program possibly 3 to 5 years. And the university actually has to put pressure on this person to get the job done, to get you out of the program, to get you graduated. Do you think this will be enough to complete my thesis, Professor Rivera? Maybe. Maybe? What do you mean maybe? I can't really tell you what a finished thesis will look like. I just know it when I see it. Can you give me a clue? And he says it's not in this room. Okay, I'm sorry. That was the non-committer. This was the underachiever. I apologize. So this is the non-committer. And then we have the criticizer. So this person is always going to find fault, major and minor with each chapter rewrite. So they're going to find big problems and small problems every time you turn something in for review. they're also always making arbitrary changes just for the heck of it. They're making they're asking you to make a change, not because it's necessary, just because they think it could be better. You know, they're critiquing, they think it could be better. So like, let's make this change. So unfortunately, the result of this is they're incapable of moving from being in a critical role to approving, to being an approver or approval, providing their approval for your project. And since their approval is actually reluctant, the way that you graduate, or the way that you're going to complete this process, is solely based on your need to graduate. So you're hitting that time to degree, which here at UTSA for a doctoral student is 8 years, and you have to graduate in 8 years or less. So that's one of the only reasons that this is passed through. So do you think to yourself, do you really want to be involved in an 8-year process? Then you have, this is for the criticizer. What is wrong with my writing? Well, for starters, you use too many sentences. Also, your choice of words is often incorrect, and your punctuation marks are strangely placed. Really, the trouble began when you first pressed a key on the keyboard. And the student says, anything else? And he says, your figures are ugly. So there's the criticizer. And then finally, we have the vacationer. Now, this may sound like someone fun to have around. It's actually not. They're usually gone during the December, January break. So kind of where, you know, where I'm speaking to you, we're in December right now. And so during this time, December, January, and we're actually in the midst of finals right now. So during the December, January break and the June through August summer break, they're unavailable. They're gone. They're either out doing their research or they're on vacation. Either way, they are inaccessible. So these people are only available usually during the long semesters, fall and spring. Weekends are their time. Weekends are off limits to communicate with them. And they will ignore emails and phone calls during times when they're on a break. And so what's the result of this type of person? If anything with your research or your progress goes south during a time when they're unavailable, your work is going to come to a screeching halt and you're not going to be able to move forward to the next step. And that's problematic, and again, that is going to extend your time to graduation. So those are some red flags to consider. So ultimately, you're wanting to avoid the worst case scenario. And how do you do that? You know, avoiding the worst case scenario meaning getting the wrong person to be your thesis or dissertation chair. So first of all, you need to be a diligent interviewer and investigator. So, you know, you're going around, you're doing basically research on the people that you're considering to be your thesis or dissertation chair. And then asking all the right questions when you are interviewing them. And in my opinion, you're looking for a leader, primarily a leader and an advocate, and someone who can be a potential colleague to you. Now, obviously, as I mentioned before, having people with the characteristics of a judge or a manager are good. But I think the person that you really want, the primary characteristics of these people need to be a leader or advocate. Obviously, you want to get the most bang for your buck. When you're interviewing them, you want to make, and you know, determining what their prominence level is. That's how you're going, you know, types of grant funding, relationships, etc. You're wanting to get the most bang for your buck, absolutely. And also what you can get out of it. Publications, jobs, in industry or in academia. You know, this person is more than just someone who's critiquing, or can be, should be, more than just someone who's critiquing your thesis or dissertation. This is someone who, and reviewing, this is someone who may have all these other ties that work together to move yourself to your next level in your profession. And then, of course, watch out for red flags. any of those red flags you want to stay away from. Here are some resources, and of course at any time you can contact me, and if you would like a copy of this presentation, you can email me at john.shaffer, SHAFFER, at utsa.edu, and I can send you an electronic copy of this presentation. But these are the resources that I used, including a reference to Mr. Cham from PhD Comics. And hopefully you found this information beneficial, and thank you very much.